Once upon a time, two friends joined forces to bring you the best in horror entertainment. Brian from the north, Tim from the south, each bringing their own unique perspective to the horror community. Movie reviews, Blu-ray releases, beer pairings, games, and more. Welcome to your new home for horror. This is Civil Gore.
Hey there, everybody. Welcome to the Civil Core Podcast. I'm your host, Tim.
And this is Brian, and we're back to finish off, finally, our SUMMER SLAYCATIon.
Hopefully.
And I know you guys all should get like an applause for sticking with us this crazy, crazy summer. I mean, between my move and just other travels and trying to get interviews scheduled to line up right and other opportunities that popped our way, it made sense to to do those decisions. But again, it's like now we're literally finishing SUMMER SLAYCATIon, kind of. I think the second part will be after the summer, but that's okay because we go right into haunt season. So it's a nice transition.
I hope everybody appreciates a lot of the crazy scheduling was due to interviews. That we've had so many great, fantastic interviews that we've already published and that we have lined up. So I hope you guys are still getting some value for your patience in withstanding our kind of crazy SUMMER SLAYCATIon schedule, because really a lot of it was around making sure we got these interviews with some really fantastic people. So I'm hoping that's going to be definitely worth the wait.
Yeah, including we have a first ever one that's going to be tied on with part 2 of our SUMMER SLAYCATIon here.
Yeah.
Which we'll leave that as a surprise, I think, till next week when you hear it. But I think it'll be good. But another addition, we're going to tweak this episode a little bit, is because I know we tend not to do the first chop. But since we've had a lot of minisodes and we haven't had a regular episode in a while, there's a couple of things we want to discuss real quick. And we figure this episode might be kind of on the short side for SLAYCATIon, so we figured it would make sense to kind of pop these in here. So I hope you don't mind a little slight change of format here. Then again, I mean, we play with the formats like silly putty, you know.
Yeah.
So.
You don't become the number 131st podcast in Croatia by staying stale, right?
No, we can't. In fact, that's why it took so long to even get there. You know, I mean,
yeah.
we were stationed for a while though. But yeah, we got a lot of stuff coming up, of course. And then, of course, when you're listening to this, hopefully you have already downloaded our link to the horror challenge this year, which is something extra mischievous, I think, this year. I think this was extra, or as Tim likes to say, diabolical this year. But so hopefully you guys are well into prepping, because we wanted to get this to a week early so you guys can really prepare this year for October 1st to start this thing.
Yeah, you're going to need it, because I started my research early when I first saw the final draft, and I was already like, oh man, this is going to take some time to really plan out. This is, we say every year, oh, this is the hardest year ever.
Yeah.
I think, I really seriously mean it this year. Like, I'm not joking this time.
But you know what I think I like about it is, and we'll mention this more in the later episode specifically about the challenge, is that I like that and Jeff I think Jeff kind of said something the other day too, is what he likes about it is you end up, because of trying to find these weird objectives, you end up digging really deep into the crevices of horror.
Yeah.
It's like, and you find things that you didn't know existed, let alone that's available to watch. And what's amazing is so many of these things where I've dug up to get some prep for my own, challenge this year, Tubi had it already, so it's waiting for us. So it's Tubi kind of is at some level is like somehow in the blood of our podcast somehow. Just knows it
and
knows what we need.
You've got to use the tools. You've got to use IMDb. You're going to have to use IMDb. You've got to use Tubi. You've got to use Google. All these things are going to be absolutely critical for you to be able to fulfill all of these objectives. And then the other part of the puzzle is trying to fit everything into the 31 films.
Yeah,
it gets crazy. But we'll talk. We talked about that on the Horror Challenge episode, yes. So I won't recap it here. But if you haven't listened to that yet, go download it, listen to it, because it gives you a lot of helpful tips.
Yes.
On how to score the maximum possible points on the horror movie challenge.
Yes. So I guess we'll go right into our first chop. I don't know. Do you want to alter? I mean, most of these are kind of added.
Yeah,
but,
we can.
But I guess I'll start with this one.
You do the ones that you added, and I'll do the promos. How about
Okay,
that?
sounds good. Sounds good. Yeah. So the first one I wanted to do is I wanted to give a shout out to a new podcast I started listening to. Well, I say new. They're relatively new. I think they started in July. It's called Spooky Chicks and Horror Flicks. It's the hosts Emma and Allie. They're like a female Brian and Tim. But
God
yeah,
help
no,
them.
yeah, no, but they're really it's kind of like this. I think the same thing that I love about Kim and Kat and what people say about our podcast about how there's this great rapport and this friends talking. They have that as well, and they kind of have like they've obviously been good friends for years. And they really just love horror movies. They love talking about it, and they're highly entertaining. So definitely think you guys should everyone should give them a listen. Also, just don't put them at 100 ahead of us in Croatia because that's our title to lose. I know,
That's right.
and there's a lot of pressure. But no, also all kidding aside, they are actually they do a fantastic job. They started out really, I think they strong too. Which is pretty good, and knowing like Tim and I are still afraid to go back to listen to our first season and first couple episodes, but they kind of started off pretty good right off the bat with some good quality podcasting there. So yeah, give them a listen once, and you can follow them on I think they're on all the socials. I know we found them on Instagram. So it's once again it's Spooky Chicks and Horror Flicks.
Very nice.
And I think everyone will get a kick out of it. Next topic here is we wanted to wish one of our good friends of the show, Xanthi Pajarillo. I probably butchered the last name again. I know you have to roll it. I'm not good at that. I apologize, Xanthi. But we wanted to wish her good luck because she's got a new endeavor coming. I mean, of course, she has her podcast, the Kindergeist podcast, which is great. She does with her niece. If you haven't heard that, give that a listen. They're on a hiatus until she gets settled again because what her new endeavor is actually she's moving to the UK from the LA area because she's doing research in children's horror and children as horror filmmakers at the University of Birmingham. And I guess, and I guess she thanked like Jed Shepard and Rebecca McKendry. They gave her some, helped her with the audition, the application, sorry, to get in there. And she, if you listen to Kindergeist, that's one of the things. It's, it's kind of like her nieces, I think they started it when she was like 12 or 13. Now she's like, I think 15. So they discuss the gateway horror topic, horror, children, what's appropriate for children in there. There's a bunch of little things like on that topic. So I think she's going to just be amazing at this class, which she took. And we just want to wish her all the luck because she's seriously one of the nicest people you could possibly meet. I mean, just class as much as you can have. I mean, when we had her on the show for to discuss the Chainsaw Award she directed, she was just so sweet and so talented. So hopefully if you see her on social media, give her a good luck wish because I think she's going to do phenomenal. But it's always a big challenge when you move out of state, let alone the country. So
Yeah.
so all the
amazing.
best for her. And then speaking of another good friend of ours, Ketrin, of course, from Kim and Kat, she has a new endeavor herself there. It's called Resting Witch Space, which is an Etsy and Amazon shop where she, if you want to check it out, it's www.restingwitchspace.com. And from there, what you can do is you can get all the different the links to her two stores, an Etsy and Amazon, and it just got some really cool stuff. And if you listen to Kim and Kat, which a lot of our listeners do, we share a lot of listeners there. She talked about kind of some of the stuff how she always wanted to get into this stuff. So just for example, like for her Etsy shop, she's got some really cool some candles on there. She's got some cool paintings, just really cool stuff like themed in like a little kind of like witchy kind of a thing here. And if you go and then I'm gonna click on her Amazon store because that's got even some really some other different kind of things with some magical incantation coloring books and stuff like that, and a cosmic zodiac journal. And she made all these great things like this. And now, I would just let you know it's listed under Lauren K. Martin when you go on the thing, but that is Ketrin. But she's got some really cool things. So if you're into that cool witchy vibe stuff, just give her a look there. And I'm gonna order some stuff myself. So we love to support our friends, as you know, especially someone as close as Kim and Ket, who has become friends with us over the years. I feel like it's like we like, like I think they started a little bit after us, but I feel like we almost started together in the podcasting world in some way.
Yeah, we kind of have. Yeah,
I feel like they've been with us the whole time, and they're just, they just it's so amazing. It's been such good friends to have, not only in the podcast world but just out there, because they are, of course, highly entertaining and talented people. So give them a shout too. So that was some of the things I wanted to do. I wanted to give some nice, good shout-outs to some people and some good luck and stuff there. And now I will turn it over to the dulcety tones of one Tim here, who will give you some nice promos here.
Yeah, I get to do all the commercials here, but not really commercials, because this is stuff I am super excited about, actually.
Yeah, we would have talked about this anyway.
Yeah, so we had the opportunity to do a Holly promo. Of course, Holly is a new Stephen King book. It's based on the Holly character that was in his trilogy of books that was Mr. Mercedes, End of Watch. The other one's escaping me right now, but I read all of them. It's the Bill Hodges trilogy. And Holly's a major character in these. It's just a wonderfully written character. It's a very complex character, very unique in literature, I think. And I just fell in love with this character. I loved her in the when they did the Mr. Mercedes series. The actress that portrayed her was terrific. I'd listened to the audiobooks of the Bill Hodges trilogy, and the way she's portrayed in those are just fantastic. So I really love this character, and I can't wait to read this book. I'll read the promo here. It says, "Own your copy of Holly, Stephen King's new suspense novel, now available wherever books are sold. Holly Gibney, one of Stephen King's most compelling and ingeniously resourceful characters, returns in this thrilling novel to solve the gruesome truth behind multiple disappearances in a Midwestern town." And if you've read any of these books, you know that Holly is a very ingenious type person with some eccentricities that make her unique. But it's almost like getting a new, like, famous classic detective character that you just immediately are drawn to. So I'm really, really excited for this book.
Yeah, and keep an eye out, because we're gonna give away I guess online. What do they call online books?
Like ebooks. Yeah, they're like ebooks. Yeah.
So we're giving away an ebook copy. So.
Yeah, so look forward for that. And speaking of more contests that are going to be running soon, we got The Exorcist 4K, which is celebrating its 50th anniversary. The Exorcist remains one of the greatest thrillers ever. The film that changed the way the genre is defined is now available in stunning 4K. Look for The Exorcist on 4K Ultra HD. And we will have some digital copies of that to give away in an upcoming promo.
It's definitely going to have some digital codes. So I think we're trying to work on that by doing either something on Threads or Instagram. We used to do it on Twitter, but we're trying to, the way Twitter is lately, it's very unreliable. So we kind of want to give something else. Like maybe we'll do like something cool on Instagram where you can like post a picture or something. Some kind of, it basically broadens the challenge we could do. And of course, it's a very big year for Exorcist. Of course, sadly we lost William Friedkin, but we're also getting the new Exorcist movie, which could be Red Tim Trigger. We don't know yet.
We don't know yet.
That'll be less easy. But I have a feeling that could be a future roundtable coming up.
It's definitely got to be a roundtable for sure.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's get into our Summer Slaycation. We are doing one of my favorite. We'll start kicking things off with one of my favorite monster movies of all time.
Yes.
And that is, of course, the Pumpkinhead franchise. I had seen, obviously I'd seen Pumpkinhead. We'll talk about that in a minute. But I'd seen Pumpkinhead 2 once. I'd watched it for one of the horror challenges. And I'd never seen Part 3 and Part 4. So this was kind of a blind franchise for me in some ways, even though it was a short franchise. And it was interesting because like I was telling Brian before the podcast, this was actually one of the hardest series, even though it's only 4 films, one of the hardest franchises for me to rank out of all the Summer Slaycations we've ever done.
Yeah, it's hard.
Yeah, it's because each sequel has good things about it and really bad things about it. And you can't just look at it and go, oh, that one was terrible.
Yeah.
Compared to this one, because they're all kind of in this zone where you could kind of throw a dart at the wall, and I could take I don't think it's any secret that Pumpkinhead's going to be our number one.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to add, with the exception of the first one, which is, I
Right.
think, is just a phenomenal film all around.
Yeah.
I mean, everything about it I love. There's no way you can not love this movie, I don't think.
But the other ones are kind of
yeah.
kind of like throwing a dart at a dartboard. Like, how do you measure them up when they each have really big flaws, but they also have good things? So I don't. We'll talk about it more when we get into our rankings in the second episode. But let's turn our attention to Pumpkinhead. This came out in 1988. It was directed by Stan Winston. Starred Lance Henriksen as Ed Harley. Ed Harley.
Ed Harley.
Ed
What a
Harley.
great name that is, by the
It's
way.
a great.
for
You'll
a
hear it
character.
20,000 times in this series.
Yeah.
Jeff East as Chris. John D'Aquino as Joel. Hopefully I didn't butcher that name too bad.
No, but do you know who he is? That's Todd Gack from Seinfeld, remember?
Oh,
Remember
well,
Todd Gack?
You know, there's got to be a Seinfeld character in every franchise, right?
Yeah, there is somewhere. I mean, they've had too many guest stars, so of course there is a peer.
Kimberly Ross as Kim, Joel Hoffman as Steve, Cynthia Bain as Tracy, Carrie Remsen as Maggie, Florence Schaffler as Haggis, Brian Bremer as Bunt, George Buck Flower as Mr. Wallace, Matthew Hurley as Billy Harley, Lee DeBrew as Tom Harley, Peggy Walton Walker as Ellie Harley, Chance Michael Corbett as Eddie Harley, Dick Warlock as Clayton Heller, Devin Odessa as Hesse, Joseph Pirro as Jimmy Joe, and Mayim Bialik as Wallace Kid. I did not pick that out. Did you?
I didn't either, but that's why I ended there. I mean, this had a lot of characters, this first one in it, so that's why I apologize to Tim now that he had to read so many, but I couldn't stop until I got to Mayim Bialik.
I totally missed her in this. So the synopsis here is: after a tragic accident, a man conjures up a towering, vengeful demon called Pumpkinhead to destroy a group of unsuspecting teenagers. So when this came out, of course, it had the iconic VHS cover with Pumpkinhead on the front. That was the first thing that drew me to it. I rented this movie. When I think back at all the horror movies I used to rent, there's very few. I would say there's very few that I had repeat rentals, because usually I would, there were so many I hadn't seen before. I would just always get something new. But Pumpkinhead, I remember renting several times. Because I just loved it so much, and I love the creature effects. And I'm not really, to be honest, I'm not technically a big monster movie fan. It's not like if you listed out a ton of horror subgenres, monster movies would not be at the top of my list, honestly.
Unless it's Universal Monsters, then.
Unless it's Universal Monsters, yeah. But
different.
typical, not Jaws, obviously, but
yeah.
typical actual monster movies are typically not super high on my list. It's not that I don't like them; it's just that it's not a subgenre that I gravitate to. But for some reason, this one really struck a chord with me, and struck a gourd with me, I should say.
Gourd. Oh, there. Yeah. I know. I was like, Tim, how did you miss that one?
I almost missed it, but I backed up and found it.
Yeah.
I'm drinking an Elysian.
I mean, the seeds were right there, Tim.
I'm drinking an Elysian the Great Pumpkin, Imperial Pumpkin Ale, which is a classic go-to. You can get it in the Elysian pumpkin case. And they have
which now actually is, I don't know about other places, but it seems like you had a good showing of it there too. I think after last year it was a little harder to find. This year I think it's very out there. I see it literally in the supermarkets, stacks of it.
Yeah, the supply chains for pumpkin stuff have definitely increased this year, and this one has it's a great pack. It's got Night Owl, which is one of my favorite pumpkin beers. Even though it doesn't sound like a pumpkin beer, Night Owl is one of my favorites. It's got the Elysian Great Pumpkin, which is an IPA. It's got a coffee stout, and I think it's got a regular stout. I'll have to go look.
Yeah, it's a nice 4-pack.
It's a very nice 4-pack.
Four options. I think you get 3 of each one in there, and they're solid. They're all very solid beers. It's and I'm glad it's not just one type either. It's nice.
That's a great pack to pick up if you see it in the store. But anyway, so back to Pumpkinhead. I rented this a lot. I remember watching it a lot. I had not watched it in probably several years when I rewatched it for this. But it still holds up really well. I mean, the effects hold up really well. It's all practical effects, obviously, 1988. But it's a darn good movie. It really
Stan Winston one, so it's they're good.
Yeah. I mean, and they're never equaled in the rest of the franchise.
Nope.
Period. Never equaled. Not even close. Not even close. Like Brian's saying. So I love this one. And I wanted to talk a bit after Brian shares his memories of how he first watched this movie. I wanted to talk a little bit about the Lance Henriksen character and his son, because I had some observations on that on the rewatch.
Yeah, I definitely didn't have like a long history as Tim. Like I used to watch it back in when it was used to be on cable and stuff. But I haven't seen it in many years. And it's funny because it always appear on the streaming services. I'm like, I gotta watch that again. I gotta watch it. I never got around to it. And now watching it, I think I definitely got reinvigorated after we met Brian Bremer at the New Jersey Horror Con. And I'm like, oh, and he reminded me I gotta go watch Pumpkinhead again. So I think that's why one of the main reasons we decided to do it for the Summer Slaycation this year. And you know what it is? What I think is so good about it? It takes a very it's not a super original horror formula if you look at the nitty gritty of it, right?
No, it's classic revenge tale. EC horror comics did them all the time, right?
Yes, same thing. And yes, you're going to say, oh, there's a little hint of Pet Cemetery in there. There's a little bit of this in there and then that in there. But what I like about it is I think it doesn't try and hide from it. It just does. It takes it. It's like, okay, this is what it's about, and we're going to do it really well. There's, and you have like, it hits the right notes where, you're sympathetic for the right people, I feel like, and it's very easy to, like, kind of get yourself wrapped up in this movie. And, it's like, how many times has horror told you, like, to kind of, like, sometimes you need to accept the death that happens in this, okay? You don't try and change fate. Yes, it's horrible what happens to Ed Harley's son in this, but, like, obviously he hasn't... himself being based on when that timing of this movie was, or and he didn't have a TV, it looked like, in his house. He had no backwards ability to look at horror movies and learn any lessons from that. But yeah, what I like about it is I like the lore of the way Pumpkinhead is and the legend of it and the rules that they've established. They stick to it pretty well, and it's just a really, like, the characters are interesting. It's like there's obnoxious people that you just want to hate, and there's people that you want to root for, and it really, I mean, that sounds so cliche, but it really has just a lot of things that I think horror fans just, the things that, like, brought you into horror in the first place, I think.
Yeah.
And that's what I love about 80s horror in general, because that was my formative years of horror, was that 80s. And, we've discussed this how many times, like when we have David on, in his In Search of Darkness docs. But it's true. It's like, when I was rewatching this, I'm like, this movie is why I like horror movies, I think. There's just something about it. I like that there's this... a lore and a world that you can get lost in, and this was made so many years ago, and yet it still hits the same notes it did. That's impressive, and that not every movie does that. And I notice it's a lot of the 80s horror movies still have that magic, and I think it is because of that time period when we all got into horror. But it still takes a movie like this to bring you in. Like, yes, there was some schlock in the 80s that, like, you watch once and you're done with. But there's also movies like this, and My Bloody Valentine, and of course the Friday the 13th, and Halloween was right on the cusp, so I'm looping that in. All those movies like that around that time have that, I mean, the lack for a better word, that it factor that brought you into horror and makes you love it so much. This is like this is a movie that people would, if like I wanted to get someone into horror, and they wanted to, this might be one I might say, you know what? Give Pumpkinhead a try. I think you might like this.
It's not exceptionally gory. I don't think there's any sex in it at all.
No. There's, I mean, yeah, the gore is very. I think it got gorier as the franchise went on, as franchises tend to.
Right. Yeah. But the original, I think, was fairly tame.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's a great.
It could be gateway horror. In all honesty,
it's a great gateway horror. I think.
Yeah. Did you show it to your kids yet or no?
Not yet. I think they would love it though.
But I could see your kid, based on what you told me they liked. I think they would absolutely love this, because it almost has kind of like a. I mean, I know it has nothing to do with it remote, but like that Gremlins kind of like level of horror, really, if you think about it.
Well, and two, it's
in terms
it's
of
kind
gore
of
and stuff,
One thing I think is kind of interesting about it is because Pumpkinhead is going after people that have wronged Ed Harley. Which and I want to talk about this because you feel a lot of sympathy for his character early on.
And Lance Henriksen is like,
he's so fantastic at it. So you feel a lot of sympathy for him, and I think that because Pumpkinhead is, you almost feel safe from Pumpkinhead in that he's going after people that have wronged Ed. He's not going after random people. he's not attacking willy-nilly. He's not like Michael Myers, where he's just killing anybody that stands in his way. He's going, well, to some extent, but he's generally targeting a certain group of people. And I almost think it almost makes you feel a little safe in terms of, like, if you were watching this as a kid in kind of a gateway horror type way, that you can kind of safely watch this and kind of enjoy it from the sidelines without feeling like you're the one being targeted, which I know seems kind of counterintuitive for a horror movie. Like, you're supposed to be scared, but this way it's almost like kind of a fun scare. It's like going through a haunt or a haunted maze.
Oh, perfect. Perfect example.
It's being scared within where you're safe, but you could still enjoy the fright without feeling targeted. And I think that's why this would make a great gateway horror movie. But back to Lance Henriksen's character, I thought it was brilliant on a rewatch, watching how quickly and effectively and efficiently they set up the love between Ed and his son. It was so well done, because think about it. A movie like this was like 90 minutes. You don't have the time to set up an hour's worth of narration to show that Ed and his son are really close. You just don't have it. You've got to show that in other ways. And I thought it was brilliant how, they showed him with his son making him the necklace, and he's like, I'm never going to take this off, kind of thing, which I thought was very sweet. But his son, I thought, was a great choice to make his son so different from the kind of rural characters these guys are. Like, his son's got these big, thick glasses.
Yeah, he very I almost thought it was like they went into the future, took Jonathan Lipnicki, and then brought him back.
Yeah, but it's almost like, I thought it was a crazy good choice, because they took this kid that just doesn't seem to fit in this environment. He just doesn't. He seems like he's way smarter. He's way more sensitive. And, they kind of go on stereotypes with the big glasses and stuff to kind of make you think he's very intelligent, kind of thing. But that shorthand really works. And I felt like Ed probably knew his son was special, and his son could get out of this environment. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, he knows that his son has the capability and the potential to make something of himself outside of this hick town. And that's another level of love and tragedy when he's gone, or when his son is killed, because he sees that potential, not just the potential of just a son in general, but the potential of that son in general.
Right.
He knew he could get out.
And also, because there's this feeling that he has where, he probably always feels, because of that, he always feels like he's almost at some level probably has this internal conflict that's, it's not overt like they mention it, but you can almost tell, and it's probably because how good Lance Henriksen is, that he's got this internal conflict of all this time. He's like, I want better for my son. He's better than this, but this is the lot we're in. I can only do what I can to make sure that he has everything he needs when its time is right for him to succeed in life. And you can get that from it. You get that from the performance of Lance Henriksen. Now, whether that was written to the script or he took it on his own, or that's just me bringing it up, it doesn't matter, because it's there, You see it there.
And, he always treats his son with respect, too. Like, he does it. And most, like, if I was just seeing this for the first time, I would expect Lance Henriksen to be like, "Come on, boy, get in the truck. I ain't got time for this."
Yeah, we don't have time for you and your little, or like you could almost see him like
learning. Yeah, that's what you kind of expect
necklace.
that.
Yeah, or you could almost see the necklace like and say, "Oh, thanks, this is great," and then like leaving it on the side.
There's this kind of stereotype, and when I'm saying stereotype, it's because you see this in so many movies, especially of this decade. You would see that kind of character, and so that's what you're kind of expecting. But he's the exact opposite. I mean, he dotes on his son. He always treats him with respect. He doesn't, he's never like talking down to him or anything, or talk badmouth him. I just thought it was a wonderful portrayal of a father-son relationship. I just really, really it struck me when I rewatched it. That's something I couldn't get as a kid, right? I didn't have kids.
As a child, I don't think you'd get younger.
You wouldn't understand that. Yeah, you wouldn't get those nuances. And I just loved when I went back and watched this as an adult with kids of my own, that I really, really picked up on that. And that adds so much to the movie, because then when his son is killed, like, it's so much more emotionally devastating as an adult than as a kid. The kid died, whatever. You don't understand the father's pain like you do as an adult. And I thought that was great.
Yeah, I mean, and there is of course, you can kind of compare a little bit if you want to say to Pet Cemetery, with Gage, but the difference is, I think, in this is like, I don't think, maybe the novel did. I did not read the novel, but neither movie of Pet Cemetery ever kind of didn't, yes, they love their kids in it, but it didn't come across as strong as this.
Right.
And
Yeah.
also remember, there was another child, another sibling, number one, and two, it was both parents were there. This is now, like, Ed Harley, or when we meet him, he's already lost his wife, and he's already taken on the mantle of both parents. He's running the store in town. He's doing everything he can. The guy probably gets like an hour of sleep a night, honestly. And so it's like, it's all the more tragic. The one thing the reason he was doing all this for is now gone.
Yeah, that's his whole world. His whole world's gone.
And even though what he does, of course, is not the right thing, it's like, it's always the classic thing. Like, revenge is never the right answer. But you almost like be like, you're rooting for him at that moment, because you're like, this, what happened to this guy is just, it's so devastating. Like, I can't imagine anyone in their place would not even like consider that option if that happened to them, right? Like, if you had a local Pumpkinhead legend in your town, and you really like, I mean, the exhaustion in his daily life as it is could lead to bad judgments alone, but then the tragedy of losing your reason for living, essentially, is taken away now. It's like you could see that, and again, I got to go back to Lance Henriksen's performances. You feel all that he's going through as a viewer.
Yeah.
And he knows, he's like, I know this is not the right thing, but I don't care. I said, they took my son from me. They need to pay, especially, and they do a good job, I think, by making most of the kids responsible. Like, the couple of them are just flat out, like, arrogant assholes,
But that brings me to a point, though. I thought it was genius that the easy route, and what I would expect from this movie, is that every kid is a bad kid.
Yeah.
And they were all picking on this kid, and they were basically almost intentionally putting him in harm's way to kill him, and that would drive their whole revenge plot. But I thought it was brilliant that the movie's much deeper than that. It's much more complex than that, because not all the kids are bad. I mean, some of these kids, they just happen to be in with a bad crowd, right?
Yeah.
And so there are some kids that are objectively bad people, but even they kind of kill him through negligence, not through intentionality. So there's a lot of complexity in how much responsibility each of these kids has. Now, Pumpkinhead doesn't care. Like, Pumpkinhead's going to kill everybody, but from a viewer standpoint, he
basically has his checklist, and that's it.
Yeah, but from a viewer's perspective, it's not so cut and dry. And I think that's another example of how brilliant this movie is and how brilliant the writing is because just like in real revenge, it's not always so cut and dry, because when you go to punish the person that's ultimately responsible, look how many other people you punish unintentionally. You go kill the guy that robbed your house or whatever, but then you've taken him away from his mother and his brother, and there's all kinds of.
Where do you end up at the end?
Yeah, there's all kinds of ramifications from these revenge stories that you don't think about, and I thought that was brilliantly portrayed in this through very simple. Again, like you said, a very simple plot line, but there's all these nuances underneath it that until I went back and watched this, I didn't pick up on when I was a kid. But looking back on it now, I'm going, man, this is like super brilliant. That's why this movie, I think, resonates with people. Sometimes you can't express why a movie is why is Pumpkinhead like one of the best 80s horror movies? You can't really express it, but I think it's because of stuff like that. Subconsciously, you get that this is a much more deeper and complex movie than you realize.
Yeah, and they even managed in that group of kids to manage a slight backstory to where you can see what, like, okay, this guy literally has been dealing with this asshole in the group for like multiple times already. This is not the first time they've gotten to situations like this,
right?
And it's so and that those little subtle things like that. Like, I think there was a line where he said, like, the John Aquino's character, he's like I can't happen again. This happened already once to me or something. And you're like, man, and this guy has not learned his lesson. It's like, if you think about it, it's like, if you want, and as a franchise in a whole, it's a lot about people just not learning their lesson kind of thing, which is a standard horror movie.
But as we'll see, the sequels are so more heavy-handed.
Yeah, they don't quite, they never, I will say, they never even come close to capturing what this has.
No, it's
Like-
the same
like Tim
basic.
said-
This the same basic
Yeah.
moral lesson, but it's not done nearly as well in the sequels.
You know, I think, and it's funny. I think literally it's the fourth one is the only one where it kind of, to me at least, brings back some semblance of like true loss, if that makes sense. You know.
Yeah, that's true.
But I mean, we'll get into that next week. But yeah, no, I mean, we could go on literally for, I think, another hour about the joys of this one. But we probably should move on to what I like to nickname Punkyhead II, because
I totally miss Soleil Moon Fry in this too. I don't know how.
yeah, Soleil Moon Fry, Punky Brewster herself.
Well, I will say, let's go.
is in this.
I will skip back just 1 second.
Oh, yeah,
Again,
yeah,
we
sorry.
already talked about how good the effects are in Pumpkinhead. All practical. They're just brilliant, and I wanted you to know that again and reiterate that, because the effects become an integral part of my ratings later on as we go through the series. Because
Yeah.
Pumpkinhead still, to this day, still holds up. That monster looks incredible. It still holds
Yeah.
up from 1988. It's unbelievable how great those effects still hold up. All right,
Yeah.
so moving on.
And one thing I will say too, to finalize before we move on to Punky 2, definitely make sure that, like, even if you have not seen this in a while, I would go watch it again. Especially, you know, it's Halloween season. It's a great movie to watch for that, and just go revisit again if you haven't seen it in years, because especially if you, like us, where we haven't seen it, you might more appreciate some of these nuances we mentioned.
Yeah, exactly. All right.
But now a movie without nuance.
Yeah, without nuance. This is a weird sequel. So Pumpkinhead 2 Blood Wings, which is already weird, from 1993, directed by Jeff Burr, starring Andrew Robinson as Sean Braddock,
Sorry.
Amy Dolans as Jenny Braddock, Soleil Moon Fry, Punky herself, as Marcy, J. Trevor Edmond as Danny Dixon, Hill Harper as Peter, Alexander Polinsky as Paul, Mark McCracken as Pumpkinhead, and Steve Canali as Judge Dixon. Thrill-seeking teenagers resurrect a demon from his grave, and a bloody rampage for revenge begins. Okay, what is weird about this sequel is that they decided to just go in they basically rebooted the whole Pumpkinhead thing.
Yeah.
They totally rebooted it. This is now a story, sort of like Friday the 13th. It's like a kid bullied, and then he...
It's like very Hatchet-esque.
Very
also.
Hatchet-esque. Yeah, that's a better comparison. It's very Victor Crowley-ish. But it's, so they pick on and bully. Back in the, 50s, I think, 50s or 60s, is how it starts out. And it starts out this really, like Brian said, he hates this, when they have to film it in black and white to show you it's in the past. Because
And it's just like black and white. There's not even any nuances. Like, it looks so... It's like they said, okay, we're going to edit it. Let's flip off the color completely. It's like that cheap black and white.
it's like cheap, like you could tell it's not even trying to look like
that just bothers me. I'm sorry. Why did it be black and white? It wasn't black and white in the time period. You had color on TV then when it took place, I think. So
but anyway, so it's a completely, there's no Ed Harley, there's none of that. It's like it just completely reboots the whole story. Same basic.
it's bad
revenge.
enough. Okay,
Yes.
it's bad enough. You do
And
that.
that's a reason why a lot of people put this at the bottom of the barrel for the Pumpkinhead series, because they don't like that it basically, because the other sequels do continue the story. This one just completely does away with everything and just starts over. I personally, like I was telling Brian, that did not bother me that much, because again, it's the next film. Like I could understand it more. Like the Wrong Turn series is a good example. Like Wrong Turn, and then you've got this whole franchise of movies, and then you come out with this other movie called Wrong Turn that's completely has nothing to do with anything. That upsets
yeah.
me. But
Don't bring that back.
but
to
a
me.
sequel coming out that's like this thing has not had time to establish a mythology, and then you reboot it immediately. I'm okay with it. It's okay. I mean, it's not my favorite, but it didn't bother me to the level that apparently it bothers a lot of Pumpkinhead fans. So
Yeah.
I'll say that going in, that
Well, think about it. Think about how much we love the first one, and then imagine if we were back in that time period. Remember that? Because I don't think back then I paid attention to when sequels came out necessarily.
Probably,
unless it was
yeah.
like Friday the 13th or Halloween or something. But like, let's just imagine the love we have for this first one, and then waiting 5 years, and then they come out with a second one, and it's this.
Well, I mean, I love the first one, but I never even knew when. Yeah, like you said, I never knew when this one came out. Like,
Think about it. It has nothing to do with all the stuff we love about the first one is absent from this. There's not even a remote bit of things I care about in this movie.
Yeah.
And you'll hear in my rankings next week. The only reason it got as high as it did is because, well, one, there's only 4 movies, but also because the ending for this was solid. And if you keep the ending where as a thing, it's a cool ending. There's a lot of action going on at the end, and a lot of people aren't speaking, which is part of the problem with this movie. The dialogue is just god awful, and as well as some of the performances. And these are people I've seen do other things, and they're fine.
Oh my God, this guy's.
I don't know what's with this movie. Why? Like, I mean, you have like half 80 sitcom stars filling this out.
You got Wish Tom Skerritt.
These the other people, and what you got? What's it? Roger Clinton is in this thing somewhere. Between the Joe, I mean, it's just so it's you know what it is. It has every type of bad movie stereotype in this movie.
Well, and then it's got the I hate this. So anytime you have this movie that takes place in the rural, like outback, like the woods, the hillbilly woods, it always does this. I mean, it's the same guitar thing every single time. When I hear that, it's like nails on a chalkboard because they use that same stock music for every time they have to demonstrate that you're in a backwoods hillbilly town. It's so ridiculous, and they used it so much in this that it was driving me crazy. But yeah, here's the problem. I didn't have a problem with the plot line per se. Like, I was okay if they're going to reboot it and they're going to do like this. Basically, this kid that they're picking on and eventually kill is like a deformed. And
he kind of looks like a little bit like Victor Crowley.
He does, or
I
like
would
the
love
dude,
to
like the
sit Adam
freak from
Green down and ask,
Funhouse.
did you get any inspiration from Pumpkinhead II?
Yeah, he kind of looks like the dude from Funhouse too, in a way. Or like, a little bit of Elephant Man mixed in there. I don't know, but I didn't mind that so much, honestly. I didn't. If you're going to have a revenge story, I'm okay with picking. I hate bullies. I hate them in real life. So anytime there's like bullies getting their comeuppance, I'm all for it. So I didn't really mind that piece of it. But my biggest problem with this movie is it's just kind of boring. It's really boring. Yeah. It's not very. The pacing, like we talked about Pumpkinhead, how you get that love for the father and son so quickly because it's well written. And it's very efficient. The pacing is great. This one, the movie really doesn't pick up until the very end, which the ending is decent, like we said.
Yeah, this one, like this and 3, I think, which we'll talk about next week. They just slog on.
They really do. This one just drags, and I think that was its biggest flaw. I really didn't have a lot of problem with it beyond that. Now the effects are not nearly as good, but somehow they managed to be better than part 3, but
yeah, they're better than 3. 3's the worst, I think.
3.
Well, even 4 somehow improved a little bit, but 3 was just god awful.
The biggest problem with 2 is it very much looks like a rubber suit, even in the close-ups, which is not the same. Like almost, I would say the close-ups in 3 and 4 are actually decent, but the close-ups. Let me reiterate the close-ups. But in this one, even the close-ups look like a rubber mask to me. I don't know. It just looked way off. The effects weren't nearly as good in this one.
Yeah. Well, I just didn't, and I didn't like any of all the characters were annoying.
Well, they were so dramatic.
The people you were rooting for kind of got annoying.
Oh, like, did you say like everyone's like going for the Oscar? Like in this, like it was so like, crazy,
so over the top acting. And now I will never. Now let me just reiterate. Explain that and reiterate the fact that. Listen, I always respect someone that takes a role, no matter what it is, and goes all in. But it looks so misplaced in this. Like literally, that one woman comes in, she goes, "Oh my god!" and she's like, "It's not even a scene it was a scene that was so calm."
Yeah,
I can't even explain it. It's weird.
I feel like Jeff Burr was like, they come in and they do this like perfectly acceptable performance, and he goes, "No, you're at a 5. I need it to be at an 11." And like these poor people,
more
like
cowbell.
The 20th take, these poor people are just going in there, just going full melodrama, and like he's like, "Perfect. That was exactly what I was looking for." Like every scene.
Yeah, and it didn't stay consistent with their character is the problem.
Yeah.
Like you'd have this calm woman that's like seems like she's really got her head on her shoulders, and then she's like screaming like a banshee in the next scene over something that did not require screaming. It's like she'd be like, and it was like almost reverse, like the stuff you'd think she'd scream about. She goes like something like, "Oh my god, these kids are running out of control. They're really crazy." We need to stop them. What do you want for dinner? It's like it was like that.
It was like that.
It's like the lines that should have been screamed were like said peacefully, and the lines that like should have been like normal were like screamed and like the Oscar clips.
Well, like
scene.
Brian texted me like while I was in the middle, like I may have just started this, and he was like watching it, and he told me, he's like, "Why is every scene so dramatic?" And when he told me that, like I could not unsee it. Like every single scene was so bad.
Even like Amy Dolenz is constantly screaming, and I've seen her in other things. She's a good actress. There's Mickey Dolenz' daughter. She was out of control, and she's out of control with Tony Danza, that 80s silly comedy, and she's fine in that. And then even Soleil Moon Frye, which I've seen in other things, obviously, other than Punky Brewster, she was like weird in this. And she's like, either she's kind of like Wiccan, now she's not, now she's back to being kind of like a Wiccan and fan of the Lord, now she's not again. I'm like, make up your mind, stay with what. It's like it seems like there were like two scripts and they merged them together, and like characters were different in each version of the script, but yet they kept the best one. I don't know. I don't know what's going on in this movie.
Yeah, it's
very, very odd.
And what's funny too is like you're gonna see throughout this series the character of the witch that summons Pumpkinhead. It drove me absolutely crazy, and we'll talk about it more in 3 and 4.
Yeah.
What's the witch's name? Haggis.
Yeah, which cracked me up. I don't think I caught that in the first movie, like that she had a name, but then she's like Haggis in there, and all I could think of is like Mike Myers.
Yeah.
Like do you have any haggis?
Well, it's funny because like you see her in the first Pumpkinhead and she looks really cool,
Yeah.
Witch of the Woods, and then like in part 2 she's got like a little bit more makeup and it's a little bit more fake looking, and then like by the time they get to part 4, they're putting like 10 pounds of makeup on this lady. I'm like, my God, like why are you like putting
almost to the point where I don't think the mouth moves.
I know it was ridiculous looking. I was like, did you just never take the mask off and you just apply the new makeup on top of the old one from like 10 years ago?
Did you make like the woman just like stay in costume since the last filming?
And then you like,
hold on, it's just another year.
Yeah,
you need to keep this on.
Well, you know what? We
don't have the budget to redo it.
We can't get these off. We're just going to put prosthetics on top of the prosthetics. How about that? Like it was ridiculous. Stan Winston, God bless, he knows what subtlety is. Like there was no subtlety whatsoever in this witch makeup and it gets worse. It gets worse and worse as the series progresses.
Yeah, I feel like that woman when the one that played Haggis at the end of part 4 when she was done, it looked like that scene in Johnny Dangerously with the shelf paper where they keep pulling it off the car. Like I feel like they must have like spent 3 days just pulling layers of makeup from all the Pumpkinhead movies.
It is so ridiculous. I don't understand it. We'll get into that. I'm gonna save that rant. I already went on a rant and a text message today about it, but I'll save that rant for the next episode. So, yeah, Pumpkinhead 2, Blood Wings, again, it's so weird. It's like, I don't hate it. I've watched this movie twice now because of once for the hard challenge and once now. I didn't like it any better. In fact, I think I liked it worse this time around. But I don't hate it, but it's just, it's just boring. It doesn't have the heart of the first movie at all.
No, it doesn't, and it's always and it's one. It already starts off behind the 8 ball a little bit because it's the second one. It's it's that first sequel to the original beloved film always has that additional challenge because like people are excited it's coming back. And, that's why, like, that second one has to be almost better than the first. At least shoot for making it better than the first. And I feel like I don't think they did that. I think they just wanted it different from the first. Yeah. And you need to shoot for better. This is why Empire Strikes Back was, like, had way more, of course, there was a different time period. They had more money thrown behind it, whatever you want to say. But still, Empire Strikes Back just had a great story. It had everything better than the first one. A New Hope when we all saw it. So it's like, but like you got to shoot for better in that sequel, and they just went for different. And what 2 could have been something that should have been like almost like part 5. Like continue the story that people love. And if you're good, like I know you said you didn't have a problem with it, and I guess in the end I don't have a problem with it. I have more of a problem where it was placed in the franchise. Like it should not have been the second one.
Yeah, you're right. It would have been better as like a reboot, like further down the road. That's why I said it's weird. It doesn't make any sense that they rebooted it right after the first one. But
and the fact now that it's sandwiched in between 3 and 4, which can take the first storyline, and this is just like a side story that has nothing to do with the others.
and I don't know. I mean,
Very
it could have
weird.
been something with Lance Henriksen's availability. Who knows? They couldn't get him back, or so they had to go in a different direction. I don't know what the whole backstory.
Maybe he was
is.
helping the first Haggis with the makeup.
Get out of-
No, actually, that first Haggis makeup was
First
good.
Haggis
so that
makeup
wasn't
was
that.
really
Wasn't
good,
that.
yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so I guess we're going to wrap it up here, and we'll
Yeah.
be back next week with our special guest and our look at parts 3 and part 4, which I'm
Yes.
very much looking forward to. So stay
That
tuned.
will be fun.
Check out our social media for those upcoming promos and contests, and we'll see you soon. Stay out of the woods.
See ya.